She was short 1 coin for the last bus when the billionaire saw the old pendant of his late daughter on her neck and froze. The night fell heavy over Los Angeles, like a thick blanket. Someone forgot to shake out. Rachel Summers stood under the flickering fluorescent light of the bus stop on Wilshire Boulevard, her fingers digging desperately through the pockets of her worn jeans. The fabric was so thin in places you could almost see through it, washed 1,000 times because she only owned 3 pairs. Come on, she whispered to herself, her breath visible in the unusually cold March air, her calloused hands, rough from years of scrubbing floors and handling cleaning chemicals, found a crumpled dollar bill, some lint, and exactly 47 cents in change. She needed $3 more. Just $3 lousy dollars for the last bus that would take her back to Eastley, back to Grandma May, who was waiting for her dinner and evening medication. The bus driver, a middle-aged man with tired eyes that had seen every sob story Los Angeles had to offer, watched her count and recount the pitiful pile of coins in her palm. He'd already started shaking his head before she even opened her mouth. "Please, sir." Rachel's voice cracked slightly. She hated begging. God, how she hated it. But pride didn't pay bus fare. "It's just a few dollars short. I swear I'll bring you the full amount tomorrow. I take this route every night. You've seen me before, haven't you?" The driver's expression didn't change. "Can't do it, miss. It's policy. I let one person ride short. I gotta let everyone." Rachel felt the familiar burn of tears threatening to spill over. Not here. Not now. She'd cried enough for one lifetime. She wasn't about to break down at a bus stop in front of strangers. Behind her, other passengers were getting impatient, shuffling their feet and checking their phones. "Please," she tried one more time, her brown eyes meeting his. "My grandmother. She's sick and—" "Step aside, miss. You're holding up the line." That's when she heard it. A voice that cut through the diesel fumes and city noise like a knife through butter. Deep, authoritative. The kind of voice that was used to being listened to. "I'll pay her fare." Rachel spun around so fast her worn sneakers squeaked against the pavement. The man standing behind her didn't belong at this bus stop any more than a Rolls-Royce belonged in a junkyard. He was tall, maybe 6'2", wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than she made in 6 months. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his face, handsome but carved with deep lines of old pain, looked like it hadn't smiled genuinely in years. But it wasn't his expensive clothes or commanding presence that froze Rachel in place. It was the way he was staring at her, or more specifically, at her necklace. The delicate silver crescent moon pendant that hung just below her collarbone seemed to catch every bit of light from the flickering bus stop sign. It was the only nice thing Rachel owned, the only connection to whoever she'd been before she woke up confused and terrified in St. Mary's orphanage 15 years ago. The man's face had gone completely white. His hand actually trembled as he pulled out his wallet, and for a moment, Rachel thought he might pass out right there on the sidewalk. "Sir," she said tentatively, "are you okay?" He didn't answer. Instead, he handed the bus driver a $20 bill with shaking fingers. "For both of us," he managed to say, his voice rough like he was fighting some massive emotion. The driver took the money without comment, probably grateful to just get the line moving. Rachel stood there awkwardly as the man, this strange, expensive-looking man who was still staring at her necklace like he'd seen a ghost, gestured for her to board first. She climbed the steps, hyper-aware of him following close behind. The bus was about half full, mostly tired workers heading home after long shifts. Rachel normally would have taken a seat near the back and put in her earbuds, but something about this situation felt off. Not dangerous exactly, but significant somehow. She sat down in a middle seat, and to her surprise, the man sat directly across the aisle from her, now that they were under the bus's fluorescent lights. She could see him better. Late 50s, maybe. Expensive watch, wedding ring. Everything about him screamed money and power. But his eyes, steel gray and currently locked on her pendant, looked haunted. "That necklace," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Where did you get it?" Rachel's hand instinctively went to the crescent moon, her fingers closing protectively around it. "It's mine," she said defensively. "I didn't steal it if that's what you're thinking." No. He shook his head quickly. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I need to know where you got it, please." There was something in his voice, a desperate, raw need, that made Rachel's defensiveness crack just a little. "It's the only thing I have from before," she said slowly. "I don't remember anything before I was 10 years old. They found me with this necklace at St. Mary's orphanage. That's it. That's all I know." The man's breathing had gotten heavier. He looked like he was trying very hard not to fall apart. 15 years ago, he asked hoarsely. "You were found 15 years ago." "Yeah," Rachel frowned. "How did you... What's your name?" "Rachel Summers. Look, mister, you're kind of freaking me out here. What's this about?" For a long moment, he just stared at her, really looked at her face like he was searching for something specific. Then he did something that shocked her completely. His eyes filled with tears. "My name is Richard Donovan," he said. And even though Rachel had never heard the name before, something about the way he said it felt important. 15 years ago, I lost my daughter in a car accident. She was 10 years old. His voice broke. Her name was Isabel. Rachel felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "I'm sorry for your loss, but I don't see what that has to..." "I had that necklace custom made for her 10th birthday," Richard interrupted, his eyes never leaving the pendant. "It's one of a kind. I designed it myself. There isn't another one like it in the entire world." He paused, his next words coming out strangled. "And on the back, if you turn it over, there are initials engraved in cursive. ID, Isabel Donovan." Rachel's hands were shaking now too. She'd never looked at the back of the pendant, never thought to. With trembling fingers, she unclasped the necklace and turned it over. There, in elegant script so small she'd never noticed, were 2 letters. ID. The bus lurched to a stop. People got off. People got on. The city continued its endless motion outside the windows. But inside, Rachel's entire world had just tilted sideways. "That's impossible," she whispered. "The police said. They told the orphanage I was abandoned, that my parents didn't want me." Richard was crying openly now, not even trying to hide it. "What if they were wrong?" he said, his voice raw with 15 years of grief suddenly cracking open. "What if someone took you? What if you didn't die that day?" The bus rumbled on through the LA night, carrying 2 strangers who maybe weren't strangers at all. One who'd spent 15 years believing his daughter was dead, and one who'd spent 15 years not knowing who she really was. Rachel touched the pendant again, and for the first time in her life, felt the weight of a past she couldn't remember pressing down on her chest. "I think," Richard said carefully, like he was afraid the words themselves might shatter something fragile. "I think we need to talk." Rachel didn't sleep that night. How could she? She lay in the cramped bedroom she shared with Grandma May's medical equipment, staring at the cracked ceiling and turning the pendant over and over in her fingers. ID. Isabel Donovan. The letters seemed to glow in the darkness. Richard Donovan had given her his business card before they parted ways at her bus stop in East LA. The card was heavy, expensive, embossed lettering that read, "Donovan International Hotels. Richard Donovan, CEO." His personal cell number was written on the back in quick, desperate handwriting. "Please," he'd said as she stepped off the bus. "Just think about what I said. I'm not asking you to believe anything yet, but let me help you. Let me at least try to find out the truth." Now, 3 days later, Rachel sat in a sleek glass office on the 40th floor of a downtown high-rise, feeling completely out of place in her clean but obviously cheap Target dress. Richard sat across from her, looking more composed than he had on the bus, but still with that desperate hope flickering in his eyes. "I want to offer you a position," he said carefully, "as my personal assistant. The salary is $80,000 a year, plus full health benefits for you and any dependents." Rachel's heart nearly stopped. 80,000. She currently made 22 working 2 jobs. "Why?" she asked bluntly. "You don't know me. You don't know if I can even do the work." Richard leaned forward. "I need someone I can trust close to me right now. Someone who understands what discretion means." He paused. "And honestly, Rachel, I need to know if there's any possibility that you're my daughter. And if I'm not," Rachel challenged, "what happens when some DNA test proves I'm just some random orphan who happened to get a stolen necklace?" Something flickered across Richard's face. Pain, but also determination. "Then I'll have tried, And you'll still have a good job and the means to take care of your grandmother properly. That was the hook. And they both knew it. Grandma May needed medications that cost over $3,000 a month. Rachel had been rationing them, stretching prescriptions, skipping doses. The guilt was eating her alive. I can't just quit my jobs and... I'll advance you 3 months' salary today, Richard interrupted. Right now, before you even start, no strings attached. Rachel stared at him. Why would you do that? Because 15 years ago, someone took everything from me, Richard said quietly. If there's even a 1% chance that I can get it back, I'll do whatever it takes. That's how Rachel Summers became the personal assistant to one of the richest men in California, even though she had no idea what a personal assistant actually did. What she didn't know was that Richard had already set other wheels in motion. That first night after meeting her, he'd contacted Marcus Webb, the most discreet private investigator in Los Angeles. And he'd done something else. Something he felt guilty about but couldn't stop himself from doing. He'd saved the water glass Rachel had used in his office. Now, 1 week into her new job, Rachel was learning that being a personal assistant mostly meant managing Richard's calendar, handling his correspondence, and apparently accompanying him to incredibly boring business meetings. She'd also learned that Richard watched her constantly, not in a creepy way exactly, but like he was studying her, the way she held her pen, how she tilted her head when concentrating, the fact that she doodled in the margins of her notepad during conference calls, always flowers and geometric patterns. Did you ever take art classes? He asked one afternoon, gesturing to her doodles. Rachel shrugged, embarrassed. Not really, I took whatever they offered at the community center when I was younger. Grandma May couldn't afford real lessons, but I always loved drawing. She paused. Sometimes I dream about painting, like really painting, with oils and big canvases and a studio with north-facing light. She laughed self-consciously. Stupid, right? Richard's face had gone pale again, that look he got sometimes that made Rachel uncomfortable. No, he said hoarsely. Not stupid at all. That evening, after Rachel left for the day, Richard locked himself in his office and pulled up a video on his computer. Home movies from 17 years ago. Isabel at 8 years old, sitting at the kitchen table with watercolors spread everywhere. Daddy, when I grow up, I want a real studio, his daughter's voice said from the speakers, with big windows and north light. Mrs. Patterson says north light is best for painting. Richard closed his eyes and let the tears fall. The DNA test results would take 2 weeks, Marcus had told him. 2 weeks of not knowing. 2 weeks of hope that felt more dangerous than any business deal he'd ever made. But Richard wasn't just waiting passively. He'd tasked Marcus with tracking down records from St. Mary's Orphanage, finding the police reports from when Rachel was found, investigating the car accident that supposedly killed Isabel. Every detail needed to be examined. What Richard didn't know was that he wasn't the only one investigating. Victoria Donovan, his wife of 7 years, stood in her husband's home office late that night, her perfectly manicured hand hovering over Richard's laptop. She'd noticed the changes in him over the past 2 weeks. The way he smiled more, how he actually seemed to have purpose again, the way he looked at that new assistant girl. Victoria knew she should feel happy that Richard was finally emerging from his depression. A good wife would be thrilled. But Victoria wasn't a good wife. She was a careful one. She opened Richard's email, knowing his password because she'd installed a keylogger months ago. Not because she didn't trust him exactly, but because information was power. And Victoria Sanders, even if she'd taken the Donovan name, never gave up power. The email from Marcus Webb Private Investigations made her blood run cold. DNA samples secured and sent to lab. Should have preliminary results within 10-14 days. Also located incident reports from St. Mary's Orphanage dated March 2010, requesting all files related to case MARIA-SM 2010-347. Will update as information becomes available. Victoria's hand shook as she closed the laptop. DNA test. That girl. The orphan assistant who wore a necklace that Victoria suddenly realized she'd seen before in photos around the house. Photos that had been taken down years ago. No, this wasn't possible. But even as panic started to claw at her throat, Victoria's mind was already working. Calculating, she pulled out her phone and scrolled to a contact she hadn't called in months. Her brother answered on the third ring. Marco. she said quietly, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "I need information about something that happened 15 years ago, and I need you to be very, very discreet." Meanwhile, Rachel lay in her narrow bed in East Law. Staring at her phone, Richard had texted her an hour ago. "Thank you for today. You're doing a wonderful job. Sleep well." It was a normal text, a boss-to-employee text, but something about it made Rachel's chest ache in a way she didn't understand. Grandma May stirred in her sleep across the room, breathing easier than she had in months, thanks to the new medications Rachel could finally afford. At least something good was coming from all this strangeness. Rachel touched the crescent moon at her throat. "Who are you?" she whispered to her reflection in the dark window. "Who am I?" In his Bel Air mansion, Richard stood at his bedroom window, looking out at the city lights and asking the universe the same question. Could it really be her? After 15 years of grief and guilt and emptiness, could his daughter really be alive? In 2 weeks, he'd know the truth. 2 weeks felt like an eternity. He didn't notice Victoria watching him from the doorway, her face carefully neutral, her mind racing with calculations and contingencies. Some truths, once uncovered, destroy everything. And Victoria had spent too many years building her life to let some orphan girl tear it down, even if that girl might be Isabel Donovan. The dreams started during Rachel's second week working for Richard. At first, they were just flashes. A blue swimming pool shimmering in sunlight, the smell of jasmine, a man's laugh that made her feel safe. She'd wake up with tears on her face and no idea why she was crying. By the third week, the dreams got more specific and more disturbing. Rachel found herself standing in a huge bedroom with white furniture and pale pink walls, a canopy bed, stuffed animals everywhere. Through the window, she could see a garden that went on forever. A woman's voice called from downstairs. Warm, loving. "Isabel, breakfast is ready, sweetheart." Then the dream would shift, violently. Darkness, the smell of something sweet and chemical. Hands grabbing her, a van door sliding shut, screaming that no one could hear. Rachel would wake up gasping, her heart trying to punch through her ribcage. "You having nightmares again, baby?" Grandma May asked one morning, her weathered hand reaching out from her adjustable bed, even though she was getting better with the new medications. She still spent most days resting. "Yeah," Rachel admitted, making tea in their tiny kitchen. "Weird ones, really vivid." "About what?" Rachel hesitated. She hadn't told Grandma May about Richard's theory, that she might be his dead daughter. It seemed too crazy, too much like something from a telenovela. But the dreams were making her wonder. "Grandma," Rachel said slowly, bringing over the tea, "when you found me at St. Mary's all those years ago, did I say anything about where I came from or what happened?" Grandma May's face grew troubled. "You didn't speak for almost 3 months. Child, just sat there, holding that necklace, staring at nothing. The doctor said you were in shock. Maybe trauma." She paused. "Why you asking about this now?" "Just the dreams. They feel like memories, but that's impossible, right? I was abandoned." "The police said so." Something flickered across Grandma May's face, an expression Rachel couldn't quite read. "Baby, there's something I should have told you a long time ago." She took a shaky breath. "I never fully believed that story. You showing up with that expensive necklace, wearing designer clothes that had been cut off you, and the way you were so terrified like you'd been through something awful." She squeezed Rachel's hand. "I was scared that if I asked too many questions, they'd take you away from me, so I kept quiet, and I'm sorry." Rachel felt the world tilt slightly. "You think someone took me, like, kidnapped me? I don't know, sweetheart. But I know that pendant wasn't something a parent gives away with a child they're abandoning." Rachel's phone buzzed. A text from Richard. "Morning meeting canceled. Would you like to have coffee instead? I'd like to talk if you're comfortable." An hour later, Rachel sat across from Richard in a quiet corner of an upscale cafe in Beverly Hills. He looked tired, like he wasn't sleeping either. "You've been having dreams," he said. Not a question. Rachel's coffee cup froze halfway to her mouth. "How did you?" "Because Isabel used to have them too. Night terrors, the therapist called them, after her mother died." Richard's voice was gentle. "And because I've been watching you, Rachel." The way you've been zoning out during meetings. How you touched your necklace this morning like it was the only real thing in the world. I feel like I'm going crazy," Rachel admitted quietly. "I keep seeing this house, this room, and there's always this feeling of being safe. And then suddenly, everything goes dark and wrong." She looked up at him. "What if they're not dreams? What if they're memories trying to come back?" Richard's hands were shaking around his coffee cup. "I think you should see someone, a therapist who specializes in recovered memories and trauma." "I can't afford. I'll pay for it," Richard interrupted. "Please, if these memories are trying to surface, you need professional help processing them. Not just for me, but for you." Rachel studied his face, the hope and fear warring there. "You really think I'm her, don't you, your daughter?" "Every day I'm more certain," Richard said hoarsely. "The way you wrinkle your nose when you're annoyed, how you organize everything by color, the fact that you hum when you're working, always the same melody. It's from a lullaby my wife used to sing." His voice broke. "Isabel hummed it all the time." Rachel felt tears burning. "But if I am her, that means someone took me from you. Someone took a 10-year-old girl and just erased her. Who does that?" "I don't know," Richard said, "but I'm going to find out." What neither of them noticed was the woman sitting 3 tables away, partially hidden behind a newspaper. Victoria had followed Rachel that morning, needing to know what was happening in these private meetings. Now, listening to Richard talk about memories and lullabies and conviction that this girl was Isabel, Victoria felt cold rage settle in her chest. This was worse than she'd thought. Much worse. She pulled out her phone and texted her brother. "We need to meet. Today, it's urgent." Rachel started therapy 2 days later with Dr. Sarah Chen, a specialist in repressed memories. The sessions were intense, draining. Dr. Chen used something called MDR, eye movement therapy, that was supposed to help traumatic memories surface safely. "Don't force anything," Dr. Chen instructed during their second session. "Let the memories come if they're ready. Tell me what you see." Rachel closed her eyes, following the light with her gaze. At first, nothing. Then, "I'm in a car, a big car, SUV maybe." Rachel's voice sounded distant. "There's a woman next to me, dark hair. She's smiling, but it doesn't reach her eyes. She gives me something to drink, lemonade. It tastes weird, but I drink it because I'm polite. And Daddy always says..." Rachel's eyes snapped open, her breathing rapid. "I called him Daddy, in the memory. I had a father." "What happened after the lemonade?" Dr. Chen asked gently. "I got sleepy, really sleepy. And then, nothing, just darkness and fear." By the end of the session, Rachel was shaking. Dr. Chen gave her grounding exercises and scheduled her for 3 times a week. That evening, Rachel showed up at Richard's office unannounced. His secretary had left for the day. He looked up from his desk, surprised. "I remembered something," Rachel said without preamble. "A woman, dark hair. She drugged me." Richard stood up slowly. "Can you describe her more specifically?" Rachel closed her eyes, trying to pull up the memory. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. Professional looking. Pretty, but cold. I remember thinking she looked like a doll. Perfect, but not real. The color drained from Richard's face. What was she wearing? Business clothes, a gray suit, I think. Why? Richard walked to a filing cabinet with movements that seemed mechanical. He pulled out a folder and opened it on the desk. Inside were old photos from 15 years ago. Company events. Office parties. "Is she in any of these?" he asked, his voice strange. Rachel flipped through them, then stopped. Her finger landed on one photo. A company picnic, Richard with his arm around a young Isabel, and in the background, talking to someone. A woman in a gray suit. "That's her," Rachel whispered. "That's the woman from my memory." Richard stared at the photo like it was a snake. "That's Victoria," he said hoarsely. "My wife. She was my secretary back then." He looked at Rachel, horror dawning in his eyes. She volunteered to chaperone Isabel's field trip that day, the day of the accident. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture too monstrous to be real. "Oh my God," Rachel breathed. "Richard, if she drugged me, if she took me, Then she faked my daughter's death and stole 15 years of our lives. Richard's voice was shaking with rage. And then she married me. Rachel felt sick. We need to be careful, if she knows we're suspicious. I know, Richard said grimly. The DNA results come back in 3 days. Until then, we act normal. You keep coming to work. I keep coming home. We don't let her know anything's changed. But it was too late for that. Because Victoria had her own investigator now, and she just received a very interesting report about Rachel's therapy sessions. The game had begun, and Victoria had no intention of losing. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. Richard held it in his hands like it contained either salvation or devastation, which, he supposed it did. Marcus Webb had delivered it personally, unusually grim-faced for a man who'd seen everything law had to offer. You sure you want to open that here? Marcus asked, glancing around Richard's office. Maybe somewhere more private. But Richard couldn't wait another second. 15 years of grief, of wondering, of that hollow ache where his daughter used to be. It all came down to this white envelope with a laboratory's return address. His hands shook as he tore it open. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. The numbers blurred as tears filled his eyes. She was alive. His Isabel was alive. Mr. Donovan? Marcus's voice sounded far away. You okay? Richard couldn't speak. He just sat there, holding the paper, letting 15 years of grief crack open into something that felt like drowning and flying at the same time. His daughter hadn't died in that burning car. She'd been alive all this time, growing up in poverty while he'd been wallowing in his mansion, never knowing, never finding her. I need to tell her, Richard finally managed. Rachel, I need to... God. Marcus, she's my daughter. She's really my daughter. Take it slow, Marcus advised. This is going to be a massive shock for her too. But Richard was already texting Rachel. Can you come to the office now? It's important. She arrived 20 minutes later. Slightly breathless from rushing, she took one look at Richard's face and went pale. The results came back. It wasn't a question. Richard stood, walked around his desk, and for the first time since hiring her, really looked at her as his daughter. How had he missed it? Her eyes were the same shape as his mother's. The stubborn set of her jaw was pure Donovan, that little scar on her eyebrow, from when she'd fallen off her bike at 7. You're her, he said, his voice breaking. You're Isabel. You're my daughter. Rachel stumbled backward like she'd been hit. No, that's 99.9%, Richard said, holding out the paper with shaking hands. You're Isabel Donovan. You're my little girl. Rachel's breathing had gone rapid and shallow. She stared at the document like it might bite her. This isn't real. This is some kind of mistake. I'm Rachel Summers. I grew up in East Law with Grandma May. I'm not some rich man's daughter. I'm not... You are, Richard insisted gently. Your name was Isabel. You loved painting and swimming. Your favorite color was purple. You had a stuffed elephant named Mr. Trunks that you refused to sleep without. You... Stop! Rachel's voice cracked. Stop telling me who I was because I don't remember. I don't remember being her. She was crying now, and Richard wanted nothing more than to pull her into his arms the way he used to when she had nightmares as a child. But she wasn't that child anymore. She was a stranger with his daughter's DNA and 15 years of different memories. I know this is overwhelming, Richard said carefully. I know you need time to process. But Rachel, Isabel, someone took you from me. Someone stole you and made me believe you were dead. Don't you want to know who? Don't you want to know why? Rachel wrapped her arms around herself. What if I don't? What if I just want to go back to my life where things made sense? You can't unknow this, Richard said softly. And your life, it was built on lies. Someone's lies. Rachel closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. When she opened them again, something had shifted. Determination replacing fear. The woman in my memory, the one with dark hair who drugged me, you said that was Victoria, your wife. Yes. Then we need to know for sure. We need proof. Richard had been thinking about nothing else since Rachel identified Victoria in that photo. Marcus has been digging. He found the doctor who signed your death certificate, Isabel's death certificate. The man lost his medical license 3 years ago for falsifying documents. He's agreed to talk. When? Tomorrow he's in Arizona now. Richard paused. I also found something else. Records from that orfanato clandestino, the illegal orphanage where you were taken. It was shut down by authorities 8 years ago, but I tracked down one of the workers. She remembers you arriving. She remembers being told to register you under a false name. Rachel's face had gone white. So it's true, all of it. Someone really did this to me, to us. Victoria did this, Richard said, and saying it out loud made the rage he'd been holding back surge forward. She worked for me. She had access to everything. She knew Isabel's schedule, knew about the field trip, volunteered to chaperone. His voice turned bitter. And then, years later, when I was destroyed and vulnerable, she consoled me, waited, made herself indispensable, married me. Why? Rachel whispered. Why would someone do something so evil? Money, power, control. Richard's jaw clenched. Victoria came from nothing. She always wanted more. And with Isabel out of the way, there was no heir, just me and my grief. Easy to manipulate. Rachel touched the crescent moon at her throat, the piece of jewelry that had survived everything. What do we do now? Now, Richard said grimly. We get proof, real, undeniable proof, and then we make her pay for every single day she stole from us. But getting proof meant confronting Victoria, and Richard knew that confronting her meant danger. A woman who could drug a child, fake her death, and marry her father was capable of anything. I need to tell Grandma May, Rachel said suddenly. She deserves to know the truth. That evening, in the small East Ellie apartment that had been Rachel's home for 15 years, the truth came out. Grandma May listened to everything. The DNA test, the memories, the suspicions about Victoria. When Rachel finished, Grandma May was crying. I knew, she whispered. I always knew something wasn't right. That pendant, those expensive clothes they'd cut off you. I knew someone was looking for you, but I was selfish. She gripped Rachel's hand. I wanted to keep you. You were my miracle baby. I couldn't let you go. You saved me, Rachel said fiercely. Whatever happened before, you're the one who loved me. You're the one who raised me. That doesn't change. But you're his daughter, Grandma May said, looking at Richard, who'd insisted on coming along. You're Isabel Donovan. You deserve that life back. I'm both, Rachel said, the words feeling true as she spoke them. I'm Rachel and Isabel. I don't have to choose. Richard smiled through his tears. No, you don't. And May, he turned to the elderly woman who'd saved his daughter when he couldn't. Thank you. Thank you for loving her, for keeping her safe. You'll always be her grandmother. Always. The three of them sat together in that tiny apartment, an impossible family formed by tragedy and love and sheer determination to survive. But across town, in a Bel Air mansion, Victoria was making plans of her own. She'd received her investigator's report. She knew about the DNA test, knew about the doctor in Arizona, knew that her carefully constructed life was about to come crashing down. She looked at herself in the mirror, still beautiful, still poised, still willing to do whatever it took to protect what was hers. 15 years ago, she'd eliminated the problem of Isabel Donovan. If she had to do it again, she would. Richard might have found his daughter, but Victoria had no intention of losing everything she'd worked for, not without a fight. And Victoria Sanders Donovan had never lost a fight in her life. Richard waited until late evening to confront Victoria. He'd sent Rachel home hours ago, insisting she stay with Grandma May where she'd be safe. Marcus Webb was parked outside the mansion. Just in case things went sideways, Victoria was in their bedroom, removing her jewelry at the vanity when Richard walked in. She looked up and smiled, that practiced, perfect smile that he now realized had always been a mask. You're home late, she said. Important meetings. You could say that. Richard closed the door behind him and locked it. The click made Victoria's hands pause for just a fraction of a second. Richard, what's going on? He pulled the DNA report from his jacket pocket and placed it on the vanity in front of her. I want you to read this. Victoria's eyes flicked to the paper, and Richard saw it. That microsecond of pure panic before her face smoothed into confusion. What is this? Don't! His voice was ice. don't pretend you don't know exactly what that is." She picked up the paper with steady hands. A performance of curiosity, but Richard could see the pulse hammering in her throat as she read. When she looked up, her face was carefully neutral. "I don't understand. This says you're the father of that girl, your assistant. Her name is Isabel," Richard said, each word precise and cold. "Though you renamed her Rachel when you dumped her at that illegal orphanage 15 years ago." Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. "Richard, have you lost your mind? You think I somehow faked your daughter's death and, what, kidnapped her? That's insane." "Is it?" Richard pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. "This is Dr. Gerald Morrison. He signed Isabel's death certificate. Funny thing, he lost his medical license for falsifying documents. He's very willing to testify about who paid him to declare an unidentifiable burned body as Isabel Donovan." Victoria's mask cracked slightly. "That doesn't prove—" "I also have testimony from Maria Gonzalez," Richard continued relentlessly. "She worked at the orphanage where you took my daughter. She remembers you bringing in a drugged 10-year-old girl and paying cash to have her registered under false documents." He stepped closer. "And then there's Rachel, Isabel, who's starting to remember. She remembers you, Victoria. Remembers you giving her drugged lemonade on that field trip." Victoria stood up, her composure slipping. "You can't prove any of this. You have the word of criminals and the confused memories of a traumatized girl." "I have DNA proof that my daughter is alive," Richard said, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "And I have a paper trail connecting you to everyone involved in making her disappear." "It's over, Victoria." For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then something shifted in Victoria's face. The mask dropped completely, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "Fine," she said flatly. "You want the truth? I'll give you the truth." She walked to the window, looking out at the glittering lights of Los Angeles. When she spoke again, her voice was matter-of-fact, almost bored. "Yes, I took Isabel. I drugged her at the field trip. Midazolam in her lemonade, very effective. I had the accident staged on Pacific Coast Highway. My brother Marco had access to resources, a girl from one of his trafficking operations. Nobody missed her. We burned the car with her inside, made sure she was unrecognizable." Victoria turned to face him. "Your precious Isabel went to an orphanage with a new name and no memory of her previous life. The drugs made sure of that." Richard felt like he'd been punched in the chest. Hearing the cold, clinical details of how Victoria had destroyed his life, stolen his child, it was worse than anything he'd imagined. "Why?" The word came out strangled. "She was a child, an innocent child. Why would you—" "Because you were mine," Victoria snapped. And for the first time, real emotion broke through. Possessive rage. "I worked for you for 3 years, Richard. 3 years of being the perfect secretary, anticipating your every need, making myself indispensable. I loved you, but you barely saw me because you were so busy being the devoted father to that little brat. She was my daughter. She was in my way." Victoria's voice rose. "As long as Isabel existed, you'd never see me as anything but the help. But with her gone, with you drowning in grief, I could be the one to save you, the one who understood, the one who stood by you through the darkness." Her smile turned cruel. "And it worked, didn't it? You married me, gave me your name, access to your fortune, your power, everything I deserved." Richard stared at the woman he'd shared a bed with for 7 years, and she was a complete stranger. Worse than a stranger. A monster. "You destroyed 2 lives for money and status," he said, disgust thick in his voice. "You made me believe my daughter was dead, made her grow up thinking she was abandoned, 15 years of her life stolen, 15 years of me grieving. All so you could what? Play queen of the castle." "Don't be so dramatic," Victoria said coolly. "The girl survived. She's fine. And you got a wife who actually understands the business world. It all worked out." "It all worked out," Richard's control snapped. He grabbed his phone. "I'm calling the police. You're going to prison for the rest of your life." But Victoria laughed. "Am I? Let's think about this rationally, Richard. I'm your wife, legally. I'm entitled to half of everything you own. If you turn me in, I'll drag your name through every tabloid in the country. The scandal will destroy your business. Your reputation. Everything you've built. I don't care. And my brother Marco." Victoria's voice dropped dangerously low. "He's not going to be happy about his sister going to prison. He might decide to solve the problem permanently. Accidents happen, Richard. To you, to Isabel, to that sweet old grandmother she's so fond of." Richard's blood ran cold. "You're threatening my daughter." "I'm explaining reality," Victoria said. "You have two choices. Forget about all this. Give me a generous divorce settlement, and let me leave the country quietly, or push this, and watch everyone you love disappear, for real this time." For a moment, Richard wanted to strangle her. His hands actually trembled with the desire to wrap around her throat, but he forced himself to breathe. To think, "You're right," he said finally, and Victoria's face showed surprised satisfaction. "I do need to think rationally about this." He pulled out his phone again, but this time he pressed play on a recording app. Victoria's voice played back clearly. "Yes, I took Isabel. I drugged her. I had the accident staged." Victoria's face went white. "You recorded?" "Every word," Richard said grimly. "And Marcus Webb has been listening through the phone in my pocket this whole time. He's already sent copies to his secure server and to my attorney." He smiled without humor. "And in case you're thinking about having your brother solve anything, the FBI is outside, have been for the last hour. They heard everything too." The color drained from Victoria's face completely. "You can't." "I already have." Richard walked to the door and unlocked it. "It's over, Victoria. You're going to pay for every single day you stole from us." The bedroom door opened, and 3 FBI agents entered, badges displayed. "Victoria Sanders Donovan, you're under arrest for kidnapping, conspiracy to commit fraud, falsifying government documents, and conspiracy to commit murder." As they read her rights and cuffed her, Victoria's composure finally shattered completely. "You bastard, you'll regret this. My brother will." "Your brother was arrested 20 minutes ago in Miami," one of the agents said. "Caught him at the airport trying to flee to Colombia. He's singing like a canary about the trafficking operation." Victoria's legs buckled as the agents led her out. She locked eyes with Richard one last time. "I loved you," she said, and for a moment, she almost sounded human. "I really did." "No," Richard said quietly. "You loved what I represented. You never loved me, and you certainly never loved Isabel enough to let her live." After they took Victoria away, Richard stood alone in the bedroom he'd shared with a monster for 7 years. His phone rang. It was Rachel. "Is it done?" she asked, her voice small and scared. "It's done," Richard said, suddenly exhausted. "She confessed everything. She's in custody. It's over." He heard Rachel crying on the other end. "I want to come home," she said. "To my real home, with you. Is that okay?" Richard's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, sweetheart, come home. I'll wait here for you. I'll wait as long as it takes. 15 years of grief, 15 years of emptiness. But finally, his daughter was coming home." The story broke on every news channel by morning. Billionaire's daughter found alive after 15 years. Wife arrested in kidnapping scheme. Rachel. She still thought of herself as Rachel, even knowing the truth. Sat in Richard's mansion watching the circus unfold on TV. Her face was pixelated in most shots, but reporters had already tracked down her East Leigh apartment building. Cameras camped outside Grandma May's building too, until Richard sent private security to relocate her to the mansion. "This is insane," Rachel muttered, watching a legal analyst speculate about Victoria's motives. "The whole world knows now." Richard sat beside her, exhausted. He hadn't slept since Victoria's arrest. "I'm sorry. I tried to keep it quiet, but with the FBI involved and Victoria's brother arrested, it was too big to contain." His phone buzzed for the 100th time that morning. More interview requests, more lawyers, more reporters. He silenced it. "The FBI wants to meet with you this afternoon," he said gently, "to take a formal statement. I'll be there with you, my attorney too." Rachel nodded numbly. Everything felt surreal, like she was watching someone else's life implode on national television. Grandma May came into the living room with tea, moving better now that she had proper medical care. "Baby, you should eat something." "I'm not hungry. You need to keep your strength up," Grandma May insisted. then looked at the TV where Victoria's mugshot filled the screen. That woman. I can't believe I let her near you at that charity event last year. Rachel's head snapped up. What? Remember? Richard hosted that fundraiser for children's hospitals. I came with you as your +1. Grandma May's face darkened. Victoria cornered me in the bathroom, asked all these questions about you, where you grew up, what you remembered from childhood. I thought she was just being friendly. She shook her head bitterly. She was checking to make sure you didn't remember. Richard's jaw clenched. She's been monitoring the situation this whole time, making sure her secret stayed buried. A new fear crept into Rachel's chest. If she was willing to kill me once, she's in federal custody, Richard said firmly. Maximum security. No bail. She can't hurt you anymore. But that afternoon at the FBI field office, they learned it wasn't that simple. Special Agent Jennifer Torres led them into a conference room. She was sharp-eyed and all business. Ms. Summers, or should I say Mrs. Donovan, thank you for coming in. Rachel is fine, she said quietly. Agent Torres opened a folder. We need to talk about Victoria's brother, Marco Sanders. He was arrested trying to flee the country. And during interrogation, he made some concerning statements. Richard leaned forward. What kind of statements? Threats, mostly. Against you, Mr. Donovan. Against Rachel. He's claiming his sister was manipulated. That you're framing her. Torres's expression was grave. But here's what worries me. Marco Sanders ran a substantial criminal organization. Drug trafficking, human trafficking, money laundering. He has resources and people loyal to him are still out there. Rachel felt cold. You think someone might try to finish what Victoria started? We're taking the threat seriously, Torres said. Marco made it clear that if his sister goes down, he wants revenge. We've already intercepted communications between him and associates discussing ways to solve the problem. Meaning kill my daughter, Richard said flatly. We're arranging protective custody. No, Richard's voice was steel. She's not going into hiding. She's already lost 15 years of her life. I'm not letting these people take any more. Mr. Donovan, I'll hire private security the best money can buy. 24/7 protection. But Rachel deserves to live her life, not hide in some safe house. Agent Torres looked like she wanted to argue, but she nodded. We'll coordinate with your security team, but you need to understand, until we've rounded up all of Marco's associates, Rachel is a target. That evening, Richard's mansion became a fortress. Professional security personnel swept every room, installed new cameras and alarms, positioned guards at every entrance. Rachel felt like she was suffocating. I can't live like this, she said, standing in what Richard had designated as her room. Though calling it a room was an understatement, it was a suite bigger than her entire East LA apartment, decorated in soft blues and whites, trapped behind walls and security guards. It's temporary, Richard promised, just until the FBI finishes their sweep. But 2 days later, things got worse. Rachel was reviewing paperwork in Richard's home office. She'd insisted on continuing to work, needing something normal to hold on to. When her phone rang, unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello, heavy breathing on the other end. Then a man's voice, accented and cold. You should have stayed lost, little girl. Rachel's blood froze. Who is this? Victoria was always too soft. Should have finished the job 15 years ago. The voice laughed, cruel and sharp. But it's not too late to correct that mistake. The line went dead. Rachel's hands shook as she showed Richard the call log. He immediately contacted Agent Torres and his security chief. The number was a burner phone, untraceable, but the message was clear. Someone from Marco's organization was coming for her. That's it, Richard said. We're leaving LA. I have a property in Montana. Completely isolated, we can... No. Rachel's voice was surprisingly steady. I'm not running. Victoria already stole 15 years. I won't let her brother steal my future too. Rachel, this isn't a game. These are dangerous people. I know that. Her voice rose. But what's the alternative? Hide forever. Let them win. She grabbed his hands. You spent 15 years grieving for me. I spent 15 years not knowing who I was. We just found each other. I'm not going to waste whatever time we have left being afraid. Richard looked at her. Really looked at her. and saw the stubborn determination that was pure Donovan. His daughter had survived being kidnapped, drugged, and erased. She'd fought her way through poverty and hardship. She was stronger than he'd given her credit for. "Okay," he said finally, "but we do this smart, enhanced security, varied routines. You don't go anywhere alone." That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She wandered the mansion's halls, tracing fingers over expensive art that should have been hers. Growing up in the library, she found photo albums. Years of her life she couldn't remember. There she was at 5, missing her front teeth. At 7, covered in paint after an art class. At 9, holding a swimming trophy. A whole life, documented and preserved, that felt like it belonged to someone else. Couldn't sleep either. Rachel jumped. Grandma May stood in the doorway in her robe. "Just looking at pictures," Rachel said, trying to remember being her. Grandma May sat beside her. "You know what I think? That girl in those pictures and the girl I raised, they're both you. Different experiences, different memories, but the same soul." She squeezed Rachel's hand. "You don't have to choose between Rachel and Isabel. You get to be both." Rachel felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I'm scared, Grandma. Someone wants to kill me, and I'm scared that even if we survive this, I'll never really fit into this world, that I'll always be the orphan pretending to be a Donovan. Listen to me." Grandma May's voice was fierce. "You survived something most people couldn't. You worked 2 jobs to keep me alive when you could barely keep yourself fed. You painted beauty in a world that tried to break you." She cupped Rachel's face. "That strength, that resilience, that's what makes you a survivor, and that's what's going to get you through this too." The next morning, Rachel woke to sirens. She ran downstairs to find Richard and the security team huddled around a laptop. One of the perimeter cameras had caught someone trying to breach the property during the night. The intruder had fled when alarms triggered, but he'd left something behind. A message, spray-painted on the security wall. "Dead girls should stay buried." Agent Torres arrived within the hour. "We're escalating this. Marco Sanders is being transferred to maximum security, complete isolation, and we're fast-tracking the investigation into his organization." But that afternoon, they got news that changed everything. Marco Sanders had been found dead in his cell. Apparent suicide. He'd somehow gotten hold of a smuggled razor blade. Or someone silenced him, Agent Torres said grimly. "We're investigating. But either way, this complicates things. Without Marco, we can't map his entire organization. Anyone he gave orders to is still out there." Richard pulled Rachel close. "It's going to be okay. We'll get through this." But Rachel wasn't sure she believed him, because somewhere out there, someone wanted her dead, and they were patient enough to wait 15 years the first time. How long would they wait now? 3 days of tense normalcy passed. Rachel went to therapy, worked from the mansion, tried to reclaim routine. Security shadowed her everywhere. Richard barely left her side. Grandma May's health deteriorated from stress. Agent Torres called daily with updates. They'd arrested 2 of Marco's associates, shut down trafficking routes, frozen accounts, but players remained unaccounted for. "We're close," Torres kept saying. "Just a few more days." But they didn't have a few more days. It happened Thursday evening. Rachel was in the library with an art history book. Richard was on a conference call. Grandma May was napping. Security was switching shifts. A 5-minute window of transition. That was all they needed. Rachel heard breaking glass downstairs, shouting, "Gunfire!" Sharp cracks that stopped her heart. She ran to the door, but it burst open. 3 men in tactical gear flooded in, professional, armed. "Don't scream," one said, pressing a gun to her temple. "You scream. Everyone dies, starting with the old woman. What do you want? You're coming with us, quietly." He zip-tied her wrists behind her back. "Move." They dragged her through the mansion. Rachel saw 2 security guards on the floor, blood pooling on marble. Her stomach lurched. "Richard," she screamed. "Dad!" One man backhanded her. "I said quiet." Stars exploded across her vision. She heard Richard shouting her name, footsteps pounding, but they forced her through a shattered window into the garden. A van waited beyond the security wall. They'd cut the fence, disabled cameras, planned down to the minute. They threw her into the van. As the door slid shut, Rachel glimpsed Richard bursting through the garden door, face twisted in anguish. Then the van roared away. Inside, they secured a hood over her head. The van bounced and turned randomly. Rachel tried memorizing the pattern, but terror scrambled her thoughts. This is how it ends, she thought. Then she thought of Richard's face. Grandma May sleeping peacefully. Victoria in her cell, probably smiling. No, Rachel hadn't survived being kidnapped once just to die now. The van stopped. They pulled her out. The air smelled like oil and salt water. Port warehouse, maybe. They dragged her across concrete. A door clanged shut. When they removed the hood, harsh fluorescent lights blinded her. Industrial space. Rusted machinery. Empty containers. Water-stained walls. A woman stepped from shadows. Mid-40s. Cold eyes. Expensive clothes. Rachel Summers. Or should I call you Isabel Donovan? The woman circled her. Your father's interference destroyed a profitable operation. Marco's arrest triggered investigations costing us millions. You die, your father suffers. We send a message. Rachel's mind raced. Stall? Give them time to find her. Victoria's in prison. Marco's dead. Killing me won't change that. No, but it will feel good. The woman dialed her phone. Mr. Donovan, we have your daughter. Speaker on. Transfer $50 million to an offshore account within an hour. Destroy all evidence connecting Victoria to Marco's organization. Do that, and maybe your daughter lives. Don't, Rachel shouted. They'll kill me anyway. A man hit her. Rachel tasted blood. Rachel, Richard's voice broke. I'll do it, whatever you want. You have 1 hour. After that, we start sending pieces. She hung up. Rachel's ears rang. Blood dripped from her split lip, but her mind kept working. Professionals. They'd wait to confirm the transfer. Maybe 90 minutes. 90 minutes to survive. They zip-tied Rachel to a support beam. While they smoked and checked phones, Rachel worked on the restraints. Flex wrists at the right angle. Pressure on the locking mechanism. The plastic gave slightly. 40 minutes passed. Rachel kept working, millimeter by millimeter. The woman's phone rang. She smiled. Excellent. The transfer is processing. She looked at Rachel. Your father really loves you. Too bad it won't matter. Rachel's blood froze. You said if he paid. I lied. The woman pulled out a gun. You're a loose end. Then the lights cut out. Total darkness, shouting, FBI, drop your weapons. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lighting the darkness. Rachel threw herself flat, zip tie finally snapping. Bullets whined overhead. Emergency lights flickered on in eerie red. FBI agents swarmed through doors. The firefight lasted maybe 30 seconds. Clear. All suspects down or in custody. Torres reached Rachel. Are you hurt? I'm okay. How did you find me? Your father had a tracking chip in that necklace. Precaution after Victoria's arrest. We followed the signal. Rachel touched the crescent moon. Sticky with blood, her talisman had led Richard to her twice now. Torres escorted her outside into flashing lights and chaos. And there, breaking through the perimeter, Richard, he ran to her and pulled her into his arms. Rachel sobbed into his shoulder. You're safe, Richard kept saying. I've got you. Behind them, agents loaded criminals into vehicles. The woman was on a stretcher, shot in the shoulder. She'd survived to face trial. Over. Really over. Can we go home? Rachel whispered. Yeah. Sweetheart. Richard kissed her head. Let's go home. The hospital kept Rachel overnight for observation. Bruised ribs, split lip, mild concussion. Nothing permanent. But Richard refused to leave, camping in the uncomfortable chair like she'd vanish if he closed his eyes. You should go home, Rachel said around 3 a.m. Get some sleep. I left you safe at the mansion too, Richard said quietly, voice raw. And they still took you. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? My money, my enemies. Victoria targeted you because of me. Everything that's happened was Victoria's choice. Rachel interrupted firmly. Her evil, not yours. She reached for his hand. Dad, you can't blame yourself. It was the first time she'd called him Dad without thinking. Richard's eyes filled with tears. I lost you once. I can't lose you again. You won't. I'm here. I'm staying. But even as she said it, Rachel wondered if that was true. Did she really want this life? The wealth, the danger, the constant threat. Agent Torres arrived with news that changed everything. Victoria wants to talk, says she has information about remaining threats to Rachel's safety. Richard's jaw clenched. It's a trick. Maybe, but her brother's associates just tried to kill Rachel and failed. If there are more players, she might trade information for a reduced sentence. Absolutely not. I'm not putting Rachel in the same room as that woman. I want to go, Rachel said. Richard stared. What? I need to see her. Understand why she did this. Rachel's voice was steady despite the fear. And if she knows about other threats, we need that information. Rachel, I'm not a child anymore. Victoria took my childhood. I won't let her take my ability to face her too. 24 hours later, Rachel sat across from Victoria in a detention facility interview room, Richard beside her, rigid with fury, Torres by the door. Guards flanked Victoria in her orange jumpsuit. Well, Victoria said, assessing Rachel, you survived? You always were stubborn? You don't get to talk like you know me? Rachel said quietly. You stole any chance of knowing me. Something flickered across Victoria's face. I suppose I did, for what it's worth. I never wanted you dead, just elsewhere. Unfortunate, Richard repeated icily. You drugged a child, faked her death, destroyed 2 lives, and you call it unfortunate. I call it necessary. You want to understand why, Rachel? Your father was the most brilliant, powerful man I'd ever met. I wanted him, but you were always in the way. The precious daughter, center of his world. As long as you existed, I was invisible. So you erased me. I moved you, gave you a different life. You survived, even thrived, and I got what I wanted. Victoria looked at Richard with something like sadness. Did you ever really love me? You were a monster wearing my wife's face, Richard said flatly. Whatever I felt died when I learned what you did. Victoria flinched, then hardened again. Fine. You want my information? Marco had a partner, someone higher up. A federal prosecutor named James Chen. He's been protecting the organization for years. Chen knows Rachel's alive and can identify others involved. He ordered her death. Torres went pale. James Chen prosecutes corruption cases for DOJ. Perfect cover. Chen knows Rachel can identify others. He ordered her death. Victoria looked at Richard. But I want something in exchange. You want nothing, Richard snarled. I want you to know the truth. I did love you, Richard, in my twisted way. I genuinely did. That's why I couldn't just kill Isabel outright. I hoped without her, you could love me back, really love me. That's not love, Rachel said. That's possession. Love doesn't destroy. No, I suppose it doesn't. But I didn't learn that until too late. Victoria turned to Torres. The files are in a safety deposit box at Pacific Trust Bank under Marco's alias. Marcus Salvador, key hidden in my storage unit. Locker 247 downtown self-storage. Everything you need to bring down Chen is there. Torres made immediate calls within an hour. Agents were executing warrants, leaving the facility. Rachel felt hollow. She'd wanted answers. Now they felt inadequate. You okay? Richard asked. I don't know. She actually thinks she loved you. Obsession isn't love, Richard said 2 days later. Torres called. The files were found. James Chen arrested along with 6 others. The trafficking organization dismantled. Rachel was finally safe. It's over, really over. You can breathe. But Rachel didn't feel relief. She felt exhausted, lost. I need to get away, she told Richard that evening. Just for a while. Clear my head. Fear flashed across his face, but he nodded. Where? Somewhere quiet. Where I can just be. The Montana property, mountains and sky. I'll come. No, Rachel said it gently. I need to do this alone. Me and Grandma May. Figure out who I am when I'm not running or fighting. Richard looked stabbed but forced a smile. Okay, whatever you need. Just come back. I will. I just need to find myself first. What she didn't say was, she wasn't sure if the person she found would want this life. Maybe Rachel Summers and Isabel Donovan couldn't coexist. Maybe she'd have to choose. Montana was everything Richard promised. Endless sky, mountains that touched clouds, Silence so complete Rachel could hear her own heartbeat. The property was more cabin than mansion, nestled in pine forests with a view that made her chest ache. Grandma May loved it immediately. "This is healing space," she said, settling into a rocking chair on the porch. "You can breathe here." And Rachel did breathe, for the first time in months. She felt like she could fill her lungs completely. The first week, she mostly slept. Exhaustion she'd been holding back came crashing down. 16-hour nights where she didn't dream, didn't wake in panic, just rested. Grandma May let her be, cooking simple meals and reading on the porch. The second week, Rachel started painting. She'd found art supplies in one of the cabin's rooms. Oils, canvases, brushes still in their packaging. Probably something Richard had stocked hoping she'd use them. She set up in the room with the best natural light and just let go. The first painting was chaos. Dark reds and blacks, violent brushstrokes that looked like screaming. She painted Victoria's face, then painted over it. Painted the warehouse, the van, the fear. Got it all out onto canvas where it couldn't hurt her anymore. The second painting was softer. Grandma May on the porch. Sunlight in her silver hair. The woman who'd saved her, loved her unconditionally. Rachel cried while painting it, but they were good tears. The third painting surprised her. It was Richard, but not as he was now, as she remembered him from those fragmentary memories finally coming back clearly. Young Richard laughing, lifting a small girl onto his shoulders, joy in both their faces. Before Victoria, before the tragedy. "That's beautiful, baby," Grandma May said, finding Rachel staring at the finished piece. "You remember that day?" "I think so. We were at the beach. He bought me ice cream and I got it all over his shirt." Rachel touched the canvas gently. "I remember being so happy, so safe, like nothing bad could ever happen while he was there. And then something bad did happen, but that wasn't his fault." "I know," Rachel sighed. I don't know how to be both people, Grandma." Rachel is strong because she had to be. She survived poverty and uncertainty. But Isabel, she was this sheltered kid who had everything. How do I reconcile that? Grandma May was quiet for a moment. "You know what I think? I think you're not two people. You're one person who's lived two very different lives. And both those experiences made you who you are now. Someone strong enough to survive hell, but soft enough to still paint beauty. That's not Rachel or Isabel. That's you." Rachel felt something click into place. "I don't have to choose." "No, baby. You don't." That night, Rachel finally called Richard. They'd been texting. Brief messages so he knew she was okay, but she hadn't heard his voice in 2 weeks. "Rachel," he answered on the first ring. "Is everything all right?" "Yeah, everything's good." She stepped onto the porch, looking at stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. "I've been painting." "You have?" The hope in his voice made her smile. "That's wonderful. I'd love to see them sometime." "You will. When I come home?" Silence then. Carefully. "You're coming home." "Yeah, Dad, I am." Rachel felt tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling. "I needed time to figure out who I was, to process everything. But I'm ready now. Ready to build a life that's mine. Not Rachel's. Not Isabel's, mine." Richard's voice broke. "I've missed you so much. I missed you too. But I needed this. Needed to know I was choosing this life. Not just falling into it because Victoria took the other option away. And you're sure. Because Rachel, if you want something different, a quiet life away from all the chaos that comes with being a Donovan, I'll understand. I'll support whatever you choose. I know you will. But here's the thing I figured out. The chaos didn't come from being a Donovan. It came from Victoria and people like her. Evil people doing evil things." Rachel watched a shooting star arc across the sky. "I'm not going to let them win by hiding. I'm going to use everything you taught me, everything Grandma May taught me, and build something good from all this pain." "What do you mean?" "I want to start a foundation for missing children and trafficking victims, kids who get stolen and renamed and lost. I want to help find them, bring them home, give them resources to heal." Her voice grew stronger. "The Crescent Moon Foundation. That's what I want to call it." Richard was crying now. She could hear it. "Isabel. Call me Rachel, or Isabel, or both. I answer to both now." She laughed softly. "They're both me. Rachel," Richard said, his voice full of pride and love. "That's the most beautiful idea I've ever heard, and I'll help however I can." "I was hoping you'd say that, because I'm going to need funding, connections, legal support. You'll have it all. Whatever you need. I'm so proud of you." They talked for 2 more hours. About the foundation, about Rachel's paintings, about simple things like the weather and what Grandma May was cooking. Normal father-daughter conversation. It felt like coming home even while being miles away. The next day, Rachel started sketching out plans. She researched similar organizations, made notes on what worked and what didn't. Grandma May helped, her years of wisdom proving invaluable. "You need someone who understands both sides," Grandma May said. "Someone who's been lost and been found. I am someone who's been lost and found." "Exactly. You're going to be amazing at this, baby." 3 weeks after arriving in Montana, Rachel felt ready. She packed up her paintings, hugged the cabin goodbye, and drove back to Los Angeles with Grandma May. Richard met them at the mansion door. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Rachel stepped forward and hugged him. Really hugged him. Not the tentative embrace of strangers, but the fierce hug of family choosing each other. "Welcome home," Richard whispered. "It's good to be home." Over the following weeks, they built the foundation together. Richard provided the initial funding, $10 million to start, and connected Rachel with lawyers, social workers, tech experts who could build databases for missing children. They secured office space, hired a small staff, partnered with FBI units specializing in trafficking. Grandma May took on an advisory role, her experience with orphanages providing crucial perspective. She was thriving with proper medical care, looking stronger than Rachel had seen her in years. 6 months after Victoria's arrest, the Crescent Moon Foundation officially launched. The press conference was packed. Everyone wanted to hear from the girl who'd come back from the dead. Rachel stood at the podium, Richard beside her, the crescent moon pendant gleaming at her throat. 15 years ago, someone stole my life, she began. Took me from my family, gave me a new name, tried to erase who I was, but I survived. And now I want to help others survive too. She looked directly at the cameras. Every child deserves to be found. Every family deserves closure. The Crescent Moon Foundation is dedicated to bringing lost children home and providing support for healing, because coming home is just the beginning. Learning to live again is the real work. The applause was thunderous. That evening, exhausted but satisfied, Rachel stood with Richard and Grandma May in the mansion's garden. They'd planted white roses, symbols of new beginnings, where the security breach had happened. Beauty reclaiming a space that had known violence. "You did good today," Richard said, putting his arm around Rachel's shoulders. "We did good," Rachel corrected. "All of us." Grandma May squeezed her hand. "Your mama would be so proud. Both your mamas, the one who gave birth to you and the one who raised you." Rachel looked at the 3 of them reflected in the garden's pond, an impossible family forged from tragedy and love. Rachel Summers, Isabel Donovan, both, neither, just herself, finally whole. "I love you," she told them. "Both of you. Thank you for never giving up on me." "Never," Richard promised. "Not in 15 years, not ever." The white roses swayed in the evening breeze, their petals catching the last light of the setting sun. Somewhere in the city, children were missing, families were broken, evil still existed, but so did hope, so did love, so did second chances. And Rachel, Isabel, whoever she chose to be in any given moment, was going to spend the rest of her life making sure that hope reached as many people as possible. The crescent moon pendant caught the light, no longer a symbol of what was lost, but of what was found, what was reclaimed, what was beginning. 1 year later, Rachel stood in the Crescent Moon Foundation's offices overlooking downtown LA. The walls displayed photos, children found, families reunited, lives reclaimed, 43 cases closed in 12 months, 43 miracles. Ms. Donovan, Maria, her assistant, and a former trafficking survivor appeared. The Peterson family is here. The Petersons had lost their daughter 8 years ago. 3 months ago, the Foundation's database flagged a match. DNA confirmed. Now 12-year-old Emma was home, healing. Mrs. Peterson hugged Rachel tightly. "Thank you for giving us our daughter back. Just love her. Be patient. That's all she needs." After they left, Rachel watched the city pulse with life. Her city, both Rachel's and Isabel's. She'd stopped separating the two. They were threads woven into something stronger than either alone. Her phone buzzed. "Richard, dinner tonight? Grandma May is making lasagna." Rachel smiled. Wouldn't miss it. Family dinners had become tradition. Every Sunday, Richard brought work stories. Rachel shared foundation updates. Grandma May fed them until they could barely move. Normal, beautiful home. Victoria's sentencing had concluded 2 months ago. 35 years without parole. Rachel had been there. "I forgive you," Rachel had said, meaning it, not because Victoria deserved forgiveness, but because Rachel deserved freedom from hate. "I forgive you so I can move on," Victoria had cried. Real tears. Maybe the first genuine emotion Rachel had seen. "I'm sorry. For whatever it's worth. I'm sorry. It's worth something. Maybe not enough, but something." Walking out of that courtroom, Rachel felt lighter. Free. The chapter finally closed. Now someone knocked on her office door. An older woman entered, mid-60s, nervous hands clutching a worn photograph. "Ms. Donovan, I'm Patricia Wu. I saw your story about being found after 15 years. She held out the photo. "This is my son Daniel, taken 23 years ago. He was 6. Police gave up after 5 years, but I never did." Rachel took the photo gently. A little boy with a gap-toothed smile. "Tell me everything." They talked for 2 hours. Rachel took notes, promised to search databases, contact law enforcement. Patricia cried, relief at finally being heard. "Even if we don't find him, thank you for trying." "I won't give up," Rachel promised. "And Mrs. Wu, I was gone 15 years and came home. Don't lose hope." That evening at the mansion, Grandma May met Rachel at the door. "There's my girl. Long day, good day though." Rachel found Richard in his study. He looked up and smiled. That genuine smile that had taken months to relearn. Working on a Sunday. Just making sure we're maximizing impact. What if we expanded internationally? "I love that idea." Rachel sat across from him. "Dad, can I ask you something? Do you ever regret it? If I'd never gotten on that bus, you could have lived thinking I was dead. Sad, but at peace. Instead, you got complicated me with 2 names and trauma." Richard took off his glasses. "Rachel, Isabel, whoever you are in any moment, you are the greatest gift of my life. Both times, when you were born and when I found you again." He took her hands. "I don't regret a single moment, because I get to know the real you, strong and kind, and determined to change the world. That's worth everything." Rachel felt tears spill over. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart. Always have. Always will." They went down to dinner. Grandma May had outdone herself. Lasagna, garlic bread, tiramisu. They sat in the warm kitchen, choosing intimacy over grandeur. "I got a call today," Grandma May said, "from St. Mary's Orphanage. They're closing permanently. Asked if I wanted anything from my old office. Are you going? I thought maybe we could go together, close that circle." The next week, they drove to St. Mary's together. The building looked smaller, shabbier, but Rachel felt the ghost of 10-year-old Rachel, terrified and alone. "This is where you found me. Right there." Grandma May pointed to the steps. "You were sitting there, not talking, just holding that pendant. I took one look and thought, that baby needs someone to love her. So I did." As they left, Rachel stopped and photographed the entrance. She posted it to the foundation's social media. "This is where I was lost 15 years ago, and where I was found, by a woman who chose to love a scared little girl. Some family is blood, some family is choice. All of it is real. If you're missing someone, don't give up hope. If you're lost, know that someone is looking for you." The post went viral. The foundation's tip line exploded with new leads. That evening, Rachel and Richard visited the cemetery where his first wife was buried. Rachel placed white roses on the grave. "Hi, Mom. I'm sorry it took so long, but I'm here now, and I'm okay. Dad's okay. We found each other, and we're building something beautiful from all the broken pieces. I hope you're proud of who I became." Richard put his arm around her. She would be so proud. As they walked back, Rachel's phone rang. Maria, from the foundation. "Rachel, we got a hit on Daniel Wu's case. A man in Oregon saw your post. Thinks his adopted brother might be Daniel. Description matches. We're arranging DNA testing." Rachel's heart soared. "That's amazing." She looked at Richard with shining eyes. "Another one. Another family might get their child back. Because of you," Richard said proudly. "Because of all of us. Because people don't give up. Because love finds a way." They drove home through LA traffic as city lights began to glow. Rachel touched the crescent moon pendant, her talisman, her connection to both lives, her symbol of hope. "You know what I realized?" Rachel said. "I always felt lost, like I spent 15 years trying to find where I belonged. But I wasn't lost. I was exactly where I needed to be, learning what I needed to learn, becoming who I needed to become. So when I finally came home, I'd be ready to help others find their way too." Richard smiled. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. It's true, and it means Victoria didn't win. She tried to erase me but just created someone stronger. Someone who understands both survival and privilege. Someone who can bridge both worlds." They walked inside together, father and daughter, found and chosen, broken and healed. Grandma May was setting the table, humming the lullaby Richard's first wife used to sing. Rachel joined in, the melody coming back from deep memory. Richard harmonized. 3 voices, 1 family, multiple stories woven into one beautiful, imperfect, perfect life. The crescent moon pendant caught light from the chandelier, no longer a symbol of what was stolen, but a beacon of what was possible, of love transcending time and trauma, of families refusing to give up, of hope outlasting evil. Rachel Summers, Isabel Donovan, one woman, one survivor, one force for good in a world that tried to break her and failed. She was home, she was found, she was whole, and she was just beginning